Greetings. Here's a Pinbot pinball machine by Williams, made in 1986. This machine used to belong to a friend of mine, and he was doing some cleanup, and there was a possibility of him selling this to me. And I talked to him about how much do you want and this and that, and he told me there's a problem with some of the switches. You can't go into diagnostic mode. Should be an easy fix. Let me fix that, and then we'll talk. Then I'll see. I'll play it, and if I still want to get rid of it, I'll let you know. I said, great. Didn't hear from him for a few days, and then I get a terse text that basically said, I was trying to fix it and I killed it. Do you still want it? Well, guess what I said? Yes, I said yes. Of course I want it. I mean, you killed it, what? You dropped it off the roof, it went up in flames or this or that, and he wasn't very... he didn't elaborate about it. He just said, look, if you want it, come get it. And so I went, and I got it. So let's see exactly what he means. Let's switch it on. So, sounds to me like, I mean, obviously something's running. Made that noise. There's nothing on the displays. The general illumination on the playfield is on, but that's not computer controlled. That's directly tied to the transformer, like 6.3 volts AC output. But none of the control lights, when it's supposed to have a light show and stuff like that, none of that's working. It's obviously trying to tell me something, but it's kind of hard to tell because the displays are out. So I guess that's what he meant. Kill the displays. So let's open her up and check a few things. Here's the inside of the back box. Looks a bit messy. The wires are all over the place. See that one board in the center top kind of hanging off. I think what happened was the plastic standoff, the adhesive on him, got melted by the heat generated by the power resistors on there. It's not touching anything. I checked it. But my suspicion at this point is that the gas plasma displays, which aren't lighting up, are missing one or more of the voltages required. I mean, if we look at the blinky LEDs, those LEDs indicate that the CPU is running. Then here is the power regulator board that generates the voltages, the high voltages in the top left of its board. And what we need to do is measure some voltages in there. I really don't like working on that section of the board while it's live, because there's supposed to be plus minus 100 volts in there, and one slip of the probes will cause certain disaster. So let's see if I can set up something that is semi-safe. Right there, those two transistors, those are the 100, and those regulate the 100 and minus 100 volts. So let's see if we can put a meter on it and measure what's coming out of those and see if my guess was right. Alright, let's check the high voltage outputs coming from the regulator. And they're coming from that connector on the top left, which we will probe in a second. Let's turn the machine on. Again, as I said, I really don't like to stick meters into live circuits that have high voltages in them. Yeah, you slip and poof, things go bad, but I need to know I need to measure it live to see if there are voltages present. We have a ground connection here, empty connection, and then we hit the first one, and that's supposed to be negative 103 volts, and it's actually negative 104 volts. You see that? Yeah. The next one is supposed to be positive 103 volts, and it's 0. So that's the voltage. We're definitely missing that voltage. And then the last connector on here supplies logic power, 5 volts. And that one is 4.998 volts, so that one's good. So we're going to have to take the board out. And again, I could probe some more, but for the aforementioned reasons, I don't like to do checking voltages. I'm going to put it on the bench and basically check it on a component level. There's not, it's this area over here. We'll just check that, check the transistors, and see if we find something. I put it on the bench. I poked and prodded. This is the high voltage section here. I checked the diodes. I checked the transistors, these two, the pre-transistors and the final transistors on diode settings. Everything came back okay. Then I started checking resistors, and everything was going okay until I found this. This thing popped out of its hole. The hole is still filled with solder over here, but I don't know how that happened, but the machine must have gotten quite a mechanical shock. The lead is still there. You can kind of see the lead. It's full length. It just came out of this hole, and this side is the positive high voltage supply. So let's solder that guy back into place and see if we have displays now. Quick look at the solder side. This is the joint in question over here. I mean, that it looks like a lead, but it isn't. It's just that solder formed this way, which means the component, and it looks factory, was probably only inserted part way into the hole, made just enough of a connection, but there was so little solder it didn't mechanically hold it in place, and it just popped out. I see another suspicious joint here. I mean, this board was reworked. I mean, look at the work over here. I got to clean this up and basically touch up all of the solder joints in this area, especially this one here where the lead is not sticking through. So this is probably the same kind of connection that this has, even though this was reworked, but it's just hanging by a thread, and obviously this one was hanging by a thread too. So let me get to work on that. Okay, I resoldered a bunch of other joints too, cleaned up a little bit, and here's a test. 3, 2, 1, power. Well, guess what? Yeah, they're back. It's telling us a just failure. What that means is that the batteries are dead and the checksums in the RAM don't match. Now, what you're supposed to do at this point is, of course, you can replace the batteries, but I can open this coin door. There are a bunch of diagnostic switches down there, and if you press them, it'll initialize memory and let you start a game. You don't have to replace batteries, but as you can see, the switches have no effect. So it's just sitting there waiting for me to press those switches, but they're not making it to the CPU board. So I guess let's check schematics and see if we can trace the wires from those switches back to the motherboard. So it's the next day. I worked on this thing. The message has changed, but this is basically because the coin doors open. When the coin doors open, I guess it doesn't let you, it turns on memory protect for the RAM, or the other way around where the coin door is closed. Either way, it still has the same problems. The buttons were unresponsive, or are unresponsive. I did continuity checks, and the wires are connected correctly. They make it all the way to the CPU board. So of course at this point it's like either the circuitry that receives the button presses on the CPU board's bad, but that circuitry is shared with a bunch of other switches that work fine. Still, you know, you could have bad gates in there, but it's a bit far-fetched, so I checked the switch again. And the bottom line is, I should have noticed this before, but switch is dead. So, if I can get this thing to focus. See the green crusties on that switch? That switch is completely eaten up inside. It doesn't work. It doesn't make contact. And the way I checked it was it's using two of the terminals on it, the white and the green wire. And what I did was I just shorted those, and I got a switch response out of it. So this particular switch is dead. This is just a toggle, so you wouldn't see any direct effect of pushing this. This affects how this acts, whether it increases or decreases and all of that. And this switch, when I pressed it hard enough, also made contact. So there's dirt in these switches, and that's where the whole problem is. And I kind of should have known, because when I opened the machine, if you look at the lockdown bar receiver down here, somebody spilled their favorite beverage on it. I already cleaned up a bit, but there's still a whole bunch of rust. And then it all flowed over here, and the switch I just showed you sits right underneath this edge of the slot. So it dripped on there and destroyed the switch. Alright, I put fresh batteries in there. Two of them were good, but one of them was at like 200 millivolts. So let's turn the machine on, and I'm going to get a jumper and use that to activate the corroded switch by just connecting the two terminals. Okay, so I don't know how this worked. I guess I gotta go through all of these. And the machine powers up. So there, the machine's functional. Let's go ahead and turn it off and see if it actually retains the RAM settings. A little more volume. Turn it off. Let it sit for a while. Let it drain. Let it do whatever it's doing. And now it's fixed. It comes up. And now we can go ahead and then check the machine out actually and see if it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. But first, what I need to do is go into that messy back box and try to clean things up a little bit. I spent some time redressing the wire harnesses in the back box, which were all over the place. It might have been that former owner had to take off the back box from the machine, which usually means you have to pretty much unplug everything and then just kind of plugged it in, but things are back in. It's still kind of messy, even though when they come from the factory they look a bit messy too, because wire management, it's attempted but not very well solved. That one board right in the middle, that you can still see the heat marks above it, those are power resistors for lights, and that board was hanging askew because it has self-adhesive standoffs that held the board, and the standoffs were essentially cooked to perfection. So I replaced those, new adhesive, and still up there even after letting the machine run. And as you can see, just a mess of wires, but everything seems to be in place over here, ready to work. Also, I was fortunate enough to find an exact replacement for the corroded switch. It's the one on top. I replaced it and all the diagnostic, and cleaned the other two, give it some contact cleaner, and everything works just fine on this now. Here's what she looks like with her back glass working. Play field's all lit up, all the bulbs are working. I did some mechanical maintenance, fixed a few lazy switches, and the only thing remaining, does the product perform as advertised? And off we go. Not very impressive. Well, that my performance machine seems to work just fine.
Now I see you.
Multi-ball. Oh. hit the ball a lot, but don't have a whole lot to show for my effort. Oh, we got one more ball. Another chance at multi-ball. Guess not. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed bringing this guy back to life. Please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. And we'll see you next time.